It's 4 in the afternoon on Thursday, October 30th here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. We start with worsening business sentiment here in Korea in the face of the sluggish global economy. Real economic figures are reflecting the pessimism which comes despite government efforts to boost growth. Ji-yeon has the details.
Business sentiment in Korea's manufacturing sector has dropped to the year's low this month, despite government efforts to boost economic growth. An official from the Bank of Korea attributes the decline to economic uncertainties, largely stemming from China and the eurozone and the fluctuation of the Korean currency. The low business sentiment is being reflected in the real economy as well. Industrial output recorded negative growth for the second straight month, declining nearly 1% in September from the previous month. And companies are not expecting the situation to improve anytime soon. In a survey of 125 chief executive officers in Korea, more than 90% of respondents said they expected the business climate next year to be similar or worse compared to this year. Less than 9% of the respondents said the Korean economy would be better next year. A lack of new growth engines was cited as the biggest concern, and a majority of those surveys said they plan to focus more on improving their financial stability than on expanding their business. The government says its utmost priority is revitalizing the Korean economy. President Park Geun-hye, in her parliamentary address on Wednesday, said that the government would increase its budget by $19 billion next year to spur growth. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And encouraging foreigners to do business in Korea is also at the heart of President Park Geun-hye's push to boost growth. So the government has designated this week as Foreign Investment Week, opening Korea's doors to investors from around the world. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
If you're interested in investing in Korea, this week may be a good time to start, as Korea's Trade Ministry is holding its annual Foreign Investment Week. Over 300 foreign investors from 22 countries are visiting the country for this occasion, including the investment chiefs of global companies like Boeing and General Electric. Nearly $60 million worth of contracts were signed on the first day of this year's Foreign Investment Week alone, with an American company acquiring $50 million of commercial real estate property and a Spanish corporation agreeing to invest $7 million into construction of a marina city on Korea's Jeju Island. Organizers are also holding sessions for foreign investors and introducing business opportunities to them that center on Korean cultural contents. They're also pinpointing prospective sectors that could benefit upon implementation of a Korea-China FTA. Later this evening, Seoul's Trade Ministry will be hosting its annual Foreign Companies Day at COEX. At this year's event, Corning will be receiving the most prestigious Gold Tower Order of Industrial Service Merit for investing an accumulated $2.5 billion and creating jobs for over 3,000 employees, while at the same time helping Korea earn its reputation as the world's leading display maker. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
But this next development is causing concerns among Korea's economic policymakers of massive capital outflow. The U.S. Fed has completely ended its 6-year-long monthly bond buying program, but decided to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable period of time. Kim Min-ji reports.
It's official. The Federal Reserve has called time on the quantitative easing stimulus program it started in 2008 during the global financial crisis. The widely expected decision came at the end of a 2-day meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee in Washington. In a statement released Wednesday, the Fed said there has been a substantial improvement in the outlook for the labor market, and the broader economy has grown stronger. The Fed also expressed confidence the gradual economic recovery in the U.S. will continue despite a global economic slowdown. With the focus on achieving maximum employment, the U.S. Central Bank said it will maintain the 0 to 0.25% target range for interest rates for what it called a considerable time. It added that a rate hike could take place if the committee sees progress towards its employment and inflation objectives. However, experts point out that uncertainties will linger because of the vagueness in the term used by the Fed.
Perhaps until the December meeting, we are going to see this enhanced volatility, because now there's going to be speculation about what are they going to change the considerable time language to. Once they give us a little bit more guidance and specificity with that, it could actually tamp down some of the market volatility because there will be less guesswork involved.
At its highest point, the central bank was pumping $85 billion a month into the financial system. It started cutting back on the program in increments last year as the economy steadily picked up. Since the program's introduction, the Fed has made more than $4 trillion in bond purchases. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And Samsung Electronics confirmed its third quarter profit was the lowest in more than 3 years because of slowing sales of its smartphones. The Korean tech giant reported Thursday that its profits in the July to September period totaled $4.4 billion, plunging 60% from a year earlier. That's in line with its guidance released earlier this month. Korea's LG Electronics, however, posted record sales in its mobile division. LG says its quarterly smartphone shipments soared nearly 40% from a year earlier, hitting nearly 17 million units, driven largely by strong sales of its flagship G3 smartphone. And it wasn't just LG that did well in the third quarter. Naver, the country's largest portal operator, posted an operating profit of around $180 million during the period, up almost 90% from a year earlier. The solid growth momentum comes despite a drop in local sales, as the company's mobile messenger line has made a successful global launch that pushed up overseas sales by over 50% to around $220 million, accounting for 1/3 of Naver's total sales. And thanks to the growing number of Chinese visitors to the country, Korea posted a tourism account surplus for the first time in 28 months. Data compiled by the Central Bank and the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute shows that foreign tourists spent a total of over $1.7 billion last month, up 35% from a year earlier, and a new all-time high. Chinese tourists accounted for almost half of all foreign visitors to Korea in September. And down in Busan, where the International Telecommunication Union meeting is taking place, Korea is making inroads into the digital documentation market, which means a more paperless society, not only in meeting rooms and conferences, but also in our daily lives. Shin Se-min has this report.
Everything is going digital these days. From paying taxes to filing out resident registration documents, the use of electronic documentation has made tasks like these much more convenient. Korea is already a leader in the government digital documentation field. But some sectors are still reliant on paper, and experts say it may be a while before the use of electronic documentation is as widespread.
It is a cultural task, and it won't be easy trying to bring everyone on board. But considering the era that we live in, digitalizing documents is something that needs to be done, and soon. There will be no more paperwork if it all goes digital.
But there's still a number of obstacles. Only 43% of institutions and businesses in Korea use electronic documentations, lower than the government's aim of 50% by 2015. And experts attribute the gap to a lack of understanding and awareness among everyday users. A group of experts gathered on the sidelines of the quadrennial ITU conference on Wednesday to discuss the possible directions for Korea in fully implementing these services on the domestic front and making inroads to the global market.
Fostering growth among private enterprises is the key to helping the sector expand. If the government puts more effort into sponsoring these services in the finance and medical sectors, where electronic documents are widely used, there will be no concerns about reaching the everyday user.
The National IT Industry Promotion Agency has already gotten a head start, and officials there say digital documentation services will soon be a reality in the IT sector. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News, Busan.
A young army conscript has been sentenced to 45 years behind bars in the bullying death of a fellow soldier back in April. A Korean military court said the army sergeant, known only by his surname Lee, was responsible for killing his 23-year-old comrade who died after being hit in the chest. An investigation showed that he had been severely bullied on a frequent basis by members of his unit. 5 other soldiers who took part in the bullying received sentences of 15 to 30 years in prison. The case stirred public outrage when it broke in this spring. Army prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. Moving on to the country's political front, the leaders of rival parties have agreed that the domestic economy is at a crucial point that will decide whether the pace of recovery speeds up or falls into a low-growth trap. Still, they have very different ideas about how to tackle the issues at hand. Ji Yeon has more.
Speaking before a full assembly, the chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sung, said Korea's economy was slipping into recession.
South Korea's economic growth rate for each quarter has been below the 1% level, which signals that the economy is not recovering. The economy expanded just 0.9% in the third quarter.
Kim proposed a three-headed attack to address the problems head-on. He called on labor, management, and the government to work together to restrain wage increases, to endorse flexibility in the labor market, and to reform pension programs. The ruling party leader also called for deregulation and promoting the service industry to create new jobs and find new growth engines. However, the interim leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy took a different tack.
The world is implementing policies to reduce government debt and stimulate consumer-based growth. At first, consumer-based growth was the government's first priority, but now the main focus is on expanding investment.
Moon said fueling growth means increasing household earnings that can lead to more consumer spending. He opposed giving tax breaks for conglomerates, saying they only hold on to their cash reserves, which cuts the money flow to households and in turn weakens consumption. While both party leaders differ on the details, they do agree that the domestic economy is reaching a crossroads that will determine whether it makes a leap forward or falls into recession. Regarding North Korean affairs, the interim chief of the opposition stressed the need for dialogue and called for lifting sanctions on the North, claiming it was the biggest obstacle to improving inter-Korean ties. The ruling party chief made no mention of North Korean matters in his speech. Ji Yeon, ARIRANG News.
Moving on to some international news, Pyongyang and Tokyo have completed talks on the North's investigation into Japanese nationals abducted by the North in the 1970s and 80s. Speaking to reporters after meeting North Korean officials in Pyongyang, Junichi Hara, Tokyo's top diplomat for Asian affairs, said his delegation stressed that the abduction issue should be given the highest priority. He also urged Pyongyang to speed up the process. North Korea said the investigation was underway in burial grounds of Japanese citizens and added it will inform Japan of any developments. The talks held in Pyongyang were the first of their kind in a decade. And finally, some positive news regarding the Ebola outbreak. World health officials say the outbreak in Liberia appears to be on a decline, but they caution about too much optimism, saying the battle at large is far from over. Connie Kim reports.
There's a glimmer of hope in the fight against Ebola in Liberia, the country hit hardest by this latest outbreak. The World Health Organization says it has solid evidence that shows the rate of new cases has been dropping for more than a week.
The actual number of newly reported cases is beginning to decline in Liberia. Most of you somewhat aware of this. It appears that the trend is real in Liberia.
The WHO official said there are now scores of empty beds in clinics and the number of burials is on the decline. He cited a major public awareness campaign and safer burial procedures as major factors behind the falling numbers. However, the Global Health Organization stressed this deadly epidemic is far from over and more financial support is necessary. The WHO initially said it needed $260 million to bring the epidemic under control, but only half of that figure has been met. Despite the optimism in Liberia, Ebola cases in neighboring Sierra Leone and Guinea are showing no signs of improvement. On top of that, Mali confirmed its first Ebola case just last week. The WHO says there have been about 3,000 new reported cases of Ebola since last weekend, bringing the total to more than 13,000. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And search efforts are intensifying at a tea plantation in central Sri Lanka after heavy monsoon rains unleashed destructive landslides there. The country's disaster management minister said more than 100 people are believed to be under the mud and debris, while other officials put the figure at upwards of 500. Local reports say an area of about 2 kilometers was affected by the landslide, crushing some 140 houses buried under 9 meters of mud. They also said many children have been orphaned following the disaster. Search efforts had been hampered by bad weather, raising the possibility of even more landslides. A video showing a woman walking the streets of New York City has gone viral. Now, that might sound innocuous enough, but the lady in question was subjected to scores of catcalls by men on the street over the course of the day. The video, which can be found on YouTube, is part of a social media campaign calling for an end to this kind of harassment. Connie Lee reports.
Girl, how you doing? Hey, beautiful.
This is a hidden camera video shot all around New York City.
How you doing?
It shows 24-year-old Shoshana Roberts, an aspiring actress wearing jeans and a black t-shirt, walking around the city and receiving all kinds of comments from random men on the street.
Wow.
At one point, a man even follows her for up to 5 minutes. In just over 10 hours, Shoshana had to endure more than 100 unsolicited comments. The video is a public service announcement made in partnership with nonprofit firm Hollaback, which hopes to combat the issue.
Street harassment is sexual harassment that happens in public space. So we're talking about groping, stalking, public masturbation, verbal comments that happen on the street, even gestures.
Since it was uploaded on YouTube on Tuesday, the video has been watched over 10 billion times and received over 50,000 comments. Organizers say they want to reveal the extent of street harassment against women and to show that it should not be tolerated. Hollaback estimates that up to 90% of women experience some sort of street harassment at some point in their lives. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
An apple a day may keep the doctor away, and the same phrase could be applied to a glass of milk, but not if you drink too much. A group of Swedish researchers say downing too much milk could double the chance of dying early. Researchers at Uppsala University conducted a 20-year study on 100,000 people's dietary habits. The results showed that those who drank 3 or more cups of milk a day died earlier than those who drank less. Also, according to the study, milk did not help in preventing bone fractures. But the researchers say they did not consider other factors such as alcohol consumption, smoking, and weight, adding they don't want to discourage people from drinking a moderate amount of milk every day. It's looking increasingly likely that nongak, a type of traditional Korean farmers' music, will be added to UNESCO's World Heritage List next month. The panel responsible for adding new cultural items has recommended the Korean community band music and dance and rituals be inscripted. 6 North Korean variations of the traditional folk song ARIRANG were also recommended. This would mark a first for North Korea to make it on the intangible cultural heritage list. South Korea's version of ARIRANG was added 2 years ago. A final decision will be made at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris in November. Many artists attempt to bring awareness to Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during wartime while creating an opportunity for victims to heal. Today marks the opening of a movie that shares the story of one former sex slave. Im Yoon-hee tells more.
Ji-yeon spent most of her life in China. Now she's an old woman, but she's hiding a dark secret in her past. A secret about how she was taken from her home in Korea and ended up in a foreign country all by herself. Ji-yeon was a sex slave, taken by Japanese soldiers during the war. And she flashes back to her treacherous journey in the movie, Tuning Fork.
The issue of the sex slave grandmas is something everyone should know about, so this movie was created upon profound meaning.
Ji-yeon is played by actress BOK, and her younger counterpart played by Yoo. And though it's been decades since the end of the war, Ji-yeon is still stuck in China. She's desperate to get back to Korea, and the pain of her past is driving both her and her granddaughter, played by actress Cho-an, to the limits.
In order to prevent such a tragic aspect of Korea's history from repeating itself, I thought about how I have to portray this so people will never forget.
The sexual slavery of Korean women by Japanese soldiers during the war has been a prominent issue in society, appearing on books, on the silver screen, and all over the internet. Even short animated movies like Her Story, which tells of one grandmother's encounter with sexual slavery, brings the issue to awareness. It's movies like these and Tuning Fork that shed light on a dark past in hopes of healing the former victims and also to make sure it never happens again. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
It's a mild day here in Korea. Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The current temperature is at 14 degrees here in Seoul, which is about 2 degrees higher than we recorded at the same time yesterday. And the daytime highs is expected to rise above 20 here in the capital city. However, the wide temperature fluctuation is the thing to keep in mind these days, so make sure to have an extra cardigan or jacket because we are expecting more than a 10-degree drop over the evening hours. And looking at the skies, we have partly cloudy skies, and with that, rain is expected tonight in both Jeolla, the provinces, and on Jeju Island, which will then expand nationwide tomorrow, lasting until Sunday. And to our readings for today, Seoul will peak at 21 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 20 and 21 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island peaks to 21, Dokdo hits 17, while Angkeugang be a bit hotter at 19 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all for now. I'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.